Welcome to this short presentation brought to you by the Herefordshire Regimental Museum. In all our museums, we have lots of photographs, and the Herefordshire Regiment is no exception. But many of these photographs remain nameless. We don't know when they were taken or where they were taken. This presentation aims to look at a few photographs we have in the museum to try and identify where and when they were taken and what the location they were taken in looks like today. These top two photographs here were taken of the drill hall in Hereford, now Suvla Barracks in Harold Street. They are taken from Harold Street, probably in the area of the volunteer pub, looking across the parade ground, now the sports field. The corrugated iron shed has now disappeared, but the perimeter wall, which you can see in the background, still exists. Although in the modern view, you can't see it because of the trees and the new garages which have been built. The next photograph on the left here is of the Herefordshire Regiment in 1908, when their annual camp was a recruiting march around the county. And here you can see them on the 30th of July marching through Ledbury. It's clearly identifiable by the market house, but what is interesting is that the frontage of the shops in the high street have hardly changed in the intervening 100 years. Carrying on with the Ledbury theme, this photograph shows New Street in Ledbury, and the top left-hand photograph is C Company of the Herefordshire Regiment mobilising on August the 5th, 1914. The bottom photograph is a squad of National Reservists reporting for full-time service. They probably enlisted under the Derby scheme in late 1915 or early 1916. The modern photograph on the right is of the same area, and you can clearly see the porchway above the doorway there, which is the same and hasn't changed in the 100 years. The next photograph is of Ledbury Station, and this again was taken on August the 5th, 1914, when the company had marched from the drill hall to the railway station to catch the train to move to Hereford to join the rest of the battalion. Unfortunately, the buildings were destroyed as part of the Beaching Blitz in the early 60s, but the scene is quite identifiable from the bridge there. When the troops mobilised in 1914, they were billeted in private houses. And this photograph is quite a well-known photograph of Herefordshire Regiment troops in billets in Northampton. It is not known exactly where it was, but the number on the doorway there can be seen and identified as number 24. Sometime later, we received a donation to the museum of the same photograph, but this time it was on a postcard which had been written on, and the address on the back was Althorpe Road, Northampton. Now, with the benefits of Google Earth and Street View, we were able to go to Althorpe Road, Northampton, and find number 24. And there is number 24. And from the surrounds of the doors, you can identify it as the same building. Additionally, looking a bit closer, perhaps even number 24 has the same door now that it had in 1914. Another photograph of troops in billets was this one, obviously supporting some sort of flag day, and the young girls there selling the flags and raising funds. But again, we didn't know where this was until another photograph was donated to the museum, which again was written on and had details saying that it was Wellingborough Street in Rushden in 1915. And again, by the good offices of Google Earth and Street View, we were able to locate those houses. And you can see them there, clearly identifiable from the windows and the surrounds of the doors. In the 1915 photograph, you can just make out a shop on the extreme right. And that shop still exists, but obviously now with a new frontage. Moving on to the interwar years now, we had this photograph in the museum. We knew where it was and when it was. Pinelli Camp in 1934, looking towards the officers' mess. Hereford and Worcester Army Cadet Force held their annual camp at Pinelli Camp in 2015. And this picture here, you can see the same building. What was the officers' mess in 1934 is now the All Ranks Canteen. This is a photograph of Hereford Sector Home Guard taken in 1944 against a very distinctive building. This building was identified as St. Ethelbert's Hospital in Castle Street in Hereford, and you can see there as it looked on a wet day recently. Also in the Second World War, we have an album in the museum of photographs taken of the regiment after D-Day. And these two photographs both have the following entry in the register there. Troops of the Herefordshire Regiment saying that it was at Avesnes on the 1st of September 1944. So first of all, we found that town. Then we looked at Google Map, and assuming that the troops were moving through the town, they were probably moving through on the main road, now known as the D339. It was then a matter of looking through Street View to find the location. And the junction shown on the bottom right-hand corner here was identified as the location. The positioning of the photographer to take the two photographs is shown here with the two views, one looking towards the approaching vehicles and one following the departing vehicles. And they're shown there again. Now, the modern views, you can see here with the Bren carrier there, if you look at the shape of the roof and the lintels above the white building there, clearly the same building, although much of the rest has changed. Identifying the next photograph was a little more difficult, but assuming the photographer had been in the same place and just turned round to photograph the departing vehicles, you can see here in the modern view what he would have seen. And if we look at a few signs there, first of all, the chimney there and the shape of the roof of that building and the shape of the roofs of the building on the right there, it is clearly that picture in that location. And finally, this picture. This is a picture of the officers of the regiment, but we had no more detail than that. However, looking at the individuals in the photograph, we noticed that it contained both Lieutenant Colonel Turner Kane, who was the commanding officer, and Brigadier Churcher, who was the brigade commander and who had been the commanding officer of the Herefordshire Regiment. Looking at the war diary, we discovered that in March 1945, the brigadier had visited the battalion twice, and it is possible and probable that during those visits, this photograph was taken. If we now look at the photograph again, in the background, it does say Harked, although the spelling is slightly different. But assuming it to be the same place, we then looked again at good old Google Earth. The photograph looks to have been taken in a market square. So we looked at the center of the town in the area marked there, where there is an open market space opposite the church. And we found this building, which is clearly the same building, although the ground floor has changed use and the building next to it has disappeared and a new building in its place. Thank you for watching this short presentation. I hope you have found it of interest. Please subscribe to and like the Herefordshire Regiment Museum's channel and press the bell icon to get new video updates and notifications. Also check out the links below for latest museum news.